Good afternoon, everyone, and welcome to the Ambassadorial Wing and another installment of the Council of One's Babylon 5 review. And hope you all are having a great Friday afternoon. You're ready for another great weekend. And thank you all for being here this afternoon. And hope you enjoy the review. And with me, as always, I have got my good friend, my fellow council member, Mountains of Elysium. Elysium, good to see you. And always a highlight of my week is getting together with you and the rest of the council, whoever is able to be here, and talk about this thing that we call and we love called Babylon 5. And to everybody that is in the chat, everybody that's lurking, or everybody that's popping in and saying hi and what have you, Bureau 31, Bureau, it is good to see you. Thank you for being here as always, and hope you enjoy the stream. And everybody, make sure smash that like button, share this out with all your friends who love Babylon 5, who love great classic sci-fi, and tell them about this little thing called the Council of Ones on the Ambassadorial Wing. But we don't stand on a bunch of ceremony here. Elysium, if you are ready, my friend, we will dig into this new episode, Atonement. And this is a very, very interesting episode to say the least. So, Elysium, I have done my thing. I yield the floor to you.
Yep, I'm ready to go. I was actually before I'd seen some of Fiona's video, and it's really good.
Mm-hmm.
She covers some really good stuff. This one we meet, I think, Ducat, which
Yes.
I wonder where another franchise that had a set on a space station got the name from. Scratching chain.
Yeah, I just happen to wonder. And to the chat, Lewis Cox. Lewis, it is good to see you, bud. Thank you for being here. Hope you're having a great day and hope you enjoyed the reviews. So I am going to go ahead and cue Council Member Fiona Wolf's video up here, and we will get her going, and then we will do our thing and break this episode down. So give me 2 shakes of a lamb's tail. Share audio. There we go. And share. Whoa. Okay. All right. There we go. Right, come on. Come on. You can do it. That's weird.
It's the internet gremlins. Yeah, I think the Membari really don't want the secrets getting out.
I think you're right. All right, hang on here. All right, let's try this again. All right. Technology is great when it works. It sucks when it doesn't. All right.
Oh, yes.
Share. All right, I think I know the problem. Probably need to close this. All right, come on.
Yes, I've been dealing with IT issues and internet issues all week. My job, and
I hear you.
It's been painful, and trying to get the project out the door.
Okay, what the hell? Okay, hang on. My computer is being very glitchy at the moment, and I don't know why. All right, hold on. Oh, for Pete's sakes.
This, I'm not sure what you're trying to do. I'll talk a little about the episode.
Yeah, go ahead, Elysium, because it's going to take a minute because everything is going a little haywire at the moment.
This episode is, I usually have maybe 1.5 pages of notes. I think I went down to 3 or 4 pages of notes on this one. It just covers so much. But yeah, Ducat is one of the best. One-off if you want to consider this as one-off, or recurring if you include the in the beginning. He's a fantastic character and played to perfection by the actor. I actually didn't write down his name, but I'll just get it there. I believe it's a German actor called Rainier Schoen. And a character I would love to have seen more of. Just unfortunate in the lore, he was killed before the series began. And another star in this is someone who will be playing a major part in season 5. That's Robin Aitken Downes, who will be Byron. He's one
Okay.
of the Mambari. He is the Mambari who said, maybe we should have contacted the humans.
All right. I am back. We are going to try this again because I closed a few things down. Let's see if I can get this to work. But yeah, Elysium, I have to say, I agree with you. The actor who played Ducat, what an absolutely stellar performance, truly. Okay, is that up? Can you all see it? All right, here we go. All right, Fiona.
She really was the deciding factor.
Okay. Let me back up a little bit here. And there we go.
Okay, then. So this is my little ramble about Atonement. I honestly did enjoy this episode because it does go into the big kind of, I don't want to say origin arc of Deleen, but the catalyst of like why certain X, Y, or Z factors happened. And especially from, the war between humanity and the Minbari. Like, she really was the deciding factor to tip everything over the edge and retaliate. So, in a very real way, she was responsible for many human deaths. And of course, throughout the episode, this particular dreaming sequence, as they call it, where she takes this stuff to relive her memory and try to get greater detail of what happened, because at the time when it was happening to her, there was a whole lot of emotion. But of course, in the course of this setup, Deleen discovers another secret, one that even some of the Grey Council knew, but they didn't want to act on, because they knew that Sinclair was Valen, and they wanted to cover up the fact that Minbari and human DNA had been mixing, for over 1,000 years, or just about 1,000 years. So kind of like how in the previous episode where it's like, oh, it was all a genetic plot, blah, 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 to create like some sort of hybrids, and Sheridan's gone nuts and all that stuff, when in reality the Minbari were kind of having some of their own reaction to that. It's like, oh, one of their greatest historical figures turned out to be a human in the beginning. Oh boy, that didn't sit well with some of them, so that's why they tried to cover it up. And by the end of the episode, they'll use the excuse of, oh, because it was like a war act, we have to let her become married to the enemy. But in reality, they had to find a way to be like, oh, we can't tell anybody that Valen was human. It'll mess up the perception of so many things, because Ducat let the cat out of the bag with his dying breath, like she is a child of Valen. There was a big reason for his selection, but it took Deleen multiple trips to be like, oh my god, I totally missed that. But then again, she would miss that because initially she was screaming for help, and they were piling up bodies to prevent the soul hunters from taking Ducat's body. Because again, that ties in with the soul hunter episode where the insane soul hunter was like, they prevented me from, gaining the greatest of souls. Interesting how this series just comes back in on itself, right? Right. But, what about, again, I'm going to repeat a little bit of this, but I love the highlight of Zach Allen getting his uniform all fixed and stitched. And he's like, it just doesn't seem right. And then the one Minbari pokes him, and Lanier's like, next time, use a bigger needle. And Zach's like, thinking Lanier's completely reprimanding her, but he's like, oh, thanks for the help. But the reason why Zach was all flustered about the uniform, because it was a very blatant move of like, hey, Mr. Garibaldi is not going to be the head of security anymore. He's not coming back, because Zach was hoping that Garibaldi would find his senses and come back. But as we all know, Mr. Garibaldi isn't exactly in the best state of mind. Do 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 do. And I'm looking at some extra bits about this. The 10th Fane of Elenia, I think, because I don't think Deleen's clan has been directly mentioned until now. Like, because Lanier's is the 3rd Fane of Jodomo and everything. So it's like, oh, like a little interesting aside. I like those little things usually when it pops up in the show. It's just a little bit of flavor. Sometimes it's not really a big plot point. It's just little interesting tidbits. But it also kind of ties into the fact that before Valen, apparently the Minbari warrior caste was, taking around stuff and like basically creating all these civil wars. So when you see everything build up for Deleen later in the season, especially with the Minbari civil war and like the Ring of Fire and everybody else's role in that's apparently how they used to solve disputes. Like they would have a representative of their faction basically take the Ring of Fire, and whoever left first would be the losing clan. But it's all subtly kind of building up to the height of the Minbari Civil War, which is also being somewhat partially instigated by the Drock, because Sheridan was directly responsible for the shadows going away. So was Deleen. You could even argue that the Centauri were part of it. So that's the reason why the Drock, unleashed the plague on Earth later on with Crusade. It's why the Drock went after the Minbari to try to have them tip the balance and basically kill each other even more. It's why the Drock overtook Moari and wanted they wanted to basically be the Shadows, even though they didn't have the tech or the gravitas to pull it off, So I like the fact that this whole series, even little things build up on each other. No matter what the episode is, most of them tie into each other in some way, shape, or form. I also do want to note that this episode has a lot more humor than the previous one, because I personally enjoyed when you see Ivanova coming out of the elevator and she's covered in garland, and you can tell she was at a kind of Drazi kind of party, because she has a bit of all Drazi stuff on her, the to kind of harken back to the green versus purple. Sheridan tries to bring it up, and she's like, nope, don't ask. And then she just walks off. And then, of course, when he gets to Deleen's quarters, she's wearing that nice little black number that he finds very enticing. But in a way, she's also doing that because she doesn't know if she's ever going to be back again. Kind of like the other time when she was recalled to the Grey Council and didn't know if she'd be able to retain her status as ambassador, let alone her Grey Council title. So, it kind of mixes the lighthearted humor with, the more serious undertone of what is Deleen.
Okay, we're gonna pause there for a few minutes, and Elysium, your thoughts on what Vienna has brought up so far?
Yeah, geez, I mean, Vienna always knows how to make a really good video and break things down, and
yes,
I think she's right. The mentioning the humor. This is what is supposed to be a breather episode, but it's really dark, and we learned some really difficult things about Deleen, and the humor balances it nicely. I honestly, every time I see that scene with Ivanova crawling, basically slithering out of the lift, and just don't ask. I get a great kick out of that. And that's something to kind of maybe delve into later, because that scene is linked to last week with Garibaldi mentioning that the Drazi don't take kindly to others infringing on their religion or their culture, but yet they've embraced Ivanova, and
Yes.
the ambassador from Drazi personally invited her. And
Well,
the cane she had when they broke her leg now seems to be almost an artifact of their culture, because she had that cane with her crawling out of the elevator.
yep. And here's the interesting thing, because I think that part of the episode and the part with Deleen actually marry each other very well. Colin, I don't know if you remember this or not, but we a couple weeks ago discussed and everything. I just didn't say anything out on social media, but my work schedule has changed and I am off on Fridays now, so we're back to going live at 3:30. So I do apologize if I didn't get that out to everybody, but yeah, and glad you're here. And you haven't honestly missed a whole lot and everything. We've just been going for a little bit now, but to kind of get back to what I was saying before that, Ivanova has found acceptance with a group of aliens that you would not think would be very accepting of others, considering their attitude towards other alien species, in particular humans, because we've always seen that Drazi are very standoffish, they're very insular, but you see the fact that Ivanova has gained their respect, and I think has gained their respect, and also they have accepted her as part of their society, and that is a great thing. With Deleen and her whole situation, she is the culmination of something that the Minbari did not even realize that was going on at the time. When Dukat tells her, when she goes through the dreaming, and Dukat tells her, "You are a child of Valen." And the Minbari finally, as hard-headed and stubborn and, well, isolationist as they can be, finally accept the fact that Deleen is both Minbari, but she is also human. And the fact is, there is a large chunk of the Minbari population who themselves are part human as well, at least on a molecular or let me say it this way, a genetic level.
Actually, this
So,
is a
yeah,
sorry,
go
Amos.
ahead.
As
No,
a
no, no, go ahead,
quick thing
Lisa.
there, they were mentioned. I don't know, was it on Low Runner or in the Lurker's Guide? I have to have a look again.
Uh-huh.
That they mentioned that possibly the facial hair on Membari is a legacy from Balin. That's not natural in the Membari species, but men with the Membari males with facial hair could be a sign that they are children of Balin also.
That didn't even cross my mind, because if you think about the majority of Minbari males are clean shaven, and while Sinclair never had a beard, he had never grown a beard of any kind. You notice with Ducat, and you notice with some other prominent and less prominent Minbari males, they too. I mean, even the older the
Draw
older well,
had
the older drawl, but also the one Minbari, Lanon, also had a beard from in the
yes,
beginning. The leader of the Rangers um,
yes, and the
before Deleen took
captain
over.
of the Tragati who committed suicide had a little goatee as well.
Did okay, so that's not actually a bad theory, that the fact that Minbari males with facial hair might have human DNA intermingled with Minbari DNA. But and here's the thing: Straczynski always has a good way of discussing topics that might seem somewhat uneasy to handle. But if you think about it on a real world level, We are all in to one degree or another connected and related. Now, depending on your point of view, whether you look at things from a theological perspective or a scientific perspective or a marrying of the two, we are quite literally all related to on one degree or another. And I think this episode is a great way of saying we may look different to one another. We may all be alien or other to each other. But in the grand scheme of things, it is not our appearances that define us. It is our experiences, our own intellect, and our backgrounds that make us who we are. And that is the grand, I think that's one of the truly interesting dynamics that play within this episode and within Babylon 5 in general. And I want to send a shout to the chat of a fellow YouTuber, a person I regard as a friend, Geek Studios. Geeks, it is good to see you. Thank you for being here. And hope you're doing well, and hope you enjoy the stream. Geeks, I don't know if you are terribly familiar with Babylon 5. We are knee deep in season 4 of the series and everything. So, but I will tell you, Geeks, if you are interested in some old school sci-fi, Babylon 5 is on HBO Max. It is a series that I have been covering for a very long time. It's a series that I love, and myself and Elysium and the others who are usually here, but for whatever reasons can't be, we are fans of this show, and we love it to death. And I will tell you, Geeks, with no hyperbole and no bias, well, very little bias. I'm a little biased on this. If you love good sci-fi, I recommend you check out Babylon 5, Geeks. So, but if you don't have anything at the moment, Elysium, we'll jump back into Fiona's video and we'll wrap it up, and then we'll go from there.
Yep, sounds good.
I do want to bring up Archer Collins' comment here real quick, because I remember that particular thing being referenced in the series finale of the reboot of Battlestar Galactica. Geeks, yeah, I think if you like Star Trek, Archer, that is not by any means shilling. I have unfortunately not been able to catch your stuff and everything. I did get the link that you sent me on Discord and everything, and I'm going to try to catch that the next time you all are live and everything, because I'm off on Sundays now. But I will definitely call Archer. I'll call it. I don't know if you are a mod or not, but I can very easily rectify that matter, I think. Okay, come on, work with me here. Oh, wait a minute. Here we go. All right. Colin, you are now a mod of the Ambassadorial Wing. So if you want to drop that link for your channel and the stuff that you are covering over there on your channel, you now have the means to do so. So by all means, go for it.
But, I was just about to drop a link for Colin, but I can't find his channel here when I'm doing the search.
Well, that's okay. That's why I gave Colin the wrench. So, ooh, promotion. Yeah, Colin, I don't give out wrenches very often. I only give them to those I think have earned them, and well, you've earned it. So, anyhow, yeah, Geeks. As I said before, if I didn't cover this on my channel, I wouldn't recommend it, but I highly recommend it, especially, like I said, if you're a fan of good sci-fi. So anyway, all right, let's get back into Fiona's video. We'll wrap it up, and then we will go from there.
And she's always gotten this from both sides ever since her transformation, from the human side, from the Minbari side. It takes a while for her ultimately to gain complete acceptance by both. But even in the future episode where, she's very old and comes onto that, news report where they're making all these speculations about Sheridan, and all she has to say is like, doesn't matter what history says about him, he was a good man and he tried his best. And then everybody's like, "Oh, like wait, that's all you came here to say?" And she's like, and to the point where she responds, basically, you basically came here to say even less than I am saying. It's a rather telling aspect of the character. She knows when people are filled with hot air, basically. And she can tell with this whole Atonement episode that some people are definitely filled with hot air and they don't want certain kinds of legacies to come out because that would mean, oh, the Minbari aren't genetically pure. So basically, she throws it in their faces. So my children won't ever be genetically pure. They're already children of Valen too. So that's why Kalain is basically, shoot, we got to figure out a way to bypass all this. So yeah, it's a mix of like being politically expedient and Deleen still gets what she wants, but it's like, oh my goodness, both the Civil Wars show the best and worst sides of both the humans and the Minbari with their each respective conflict. So that's what I can appreciate about this show. It doesn't show everybody as like a gray morality muckety muck. There's some people that have very high virtuous standards, and there are genuine villains in this series. So, how are you guys doing? Everybody doing good today? But to continue on, the whole Franklin and Marcus development. So now we have to also push forward with the human Civil War. And Deleen does remark, like, you know what, I need to leave you alone because you have changed since you came back from Zahadum, and you feel more comfortable being more dangerous when I'm not around. And it's true. Like, Sheridan tries to hold back some of the stuff he learned when he went through the abyss and whatnot. So, yeah, in a way, sometimes, especially with married life, yeah, you have to think of like, how will this affect my spouse versus how it will affect me. And that's what I love about the Sheridan and Deleen dynamic. You can't go wrong there. But yeah, oh boy, the way Marcus and Franklin get to travel to Mars, that's the good stuff right there. But I guess the one last thing I really want to highlight with this episode is the way Lanier unflinchingly follows her through every kind of fire imaginable, which will butt up against him, when the season 5 rolls around and the Night of the Dead and everything else, because he did not want to listen to his visitor when it came to that season. Oof. But this actually does showcase that even through the dreaming and everything else, Lanier knows he can't have Deleen, but on the other hand, he can't seem to keep himself away, And on some level, I think Deleen recognizes that Lanier has feelings for her. But it's kind of like, the heart and the mind aren't quite in sync, and eventually it will lead to some tragedy later. And the biggest thing Deleen has to say to him is like, understanding can be dangerous. Oh yeah, it definitely can. It definitely can. And eventually Lanier's going to find this out. Oh man, I mean, he has about as much luck with his love life as poor Vonova. Oh my goodness. Oh. Let's see. If any other stray thoughts. I do like the mirroring of Dukat as the mentor versus Deleen being the acolyte, because it mirrors how Deleen's the mentor and Lanier's the acolyte. But there's like such a different dynamic, especially in terms of like love. I got the feeling that she had more of a daughter's affection for her father when it came to Dukat. And, of course, Lanier has romantic leanings, so that adds a whole different dynamic to that dreaming portion. But you can see how her interactions with Dukat inferred her interactions with Lanier. Like, I will not have an aide who will not look up. You'll be forever bumping into things. That's pretty much what Dukat said to her. And I just like these like little mirror elements where you can see how the teachings of one person got passed on to another and affected them in a very big way. So how about you guys? What do you think of this episode? I imagine there'll be much deliberations.
Well, she really did a great job with that.
I forgot. I was muted. Sorry, I started to say that. Fiona always does a great job with those videos. She never ceases to impress, even when she's not here. I mean, Fiona, if you catch us on the replay, Madam or Lady Council member, you knocked it out of the park, as you often do. So we miss you, and we look forward to seeing you again. So, but yeah, she unloads a lot there, Elysium. So,
Yeah.
your thoughts?
No, I did like, and it's something I was going to bring up in my notes, the contrast between her and Ducat. How I think she looked to, after her actions of basically ordering the war, she's the one who gave the order. Because had she said, let's find out what happened, that war would not have happened.
Yeah.
And learning from that, she called Ducat the best of us. So I think she modeled a lot of what she became on him. Like Fiona said, how she treats Lanier. She speaks to him and elevates him, treats him with respect that I've noticed in some of the other Membari they do not do. It's very kind of upward respect for some of them.
Well, and I will say this, and this might be an interesting parallel. I see a little bit of the dynamic between, and I know that some people may groan at this, but I see some of the dynamic between Obi-Wan and Qui-Gon Jinn from Phantom Menace, between Ducat and Deleen.
I see that actually. And you coached me in on those Star Wars. So again, thank you.
You're welcome, Elysium. That was a lot of fun. I won't lie. But yeah, honestly, Ducat is kind of the rebellious leader of the Great Council. And I have to admit, one of my favorite scenes with him in this episode is when he brings Deleen into the midst of the council. And she's just an acolyte. She's not full on Satai yet. And he uses her, and he's like, I fear I have done you much disservice and discredit here, Deleen. But he's like, I needed to do this because I needed them to see their own foolishness and their own arrogance right in front of their faces. And he's like, you know nothing about the humans, but you are curious. And he's like, a simple acolyte has more curiosity and more passion than you stodgy old dried up Membari prunes do. Granted, I'm using a little hyperbole and a little dramatic effect because he doesn't actually say those things, but you get my drift. And she's like, no, it's okay. And she's like, I didn't mind what you did. She's like, there's truth in it. And he's like, be quiet while I'm trying to be kind. Yes. Or when I'm trying to back you up here. And then, of course, there's a scene where she is initiated into the council. And that also is a great moment. Yeah, Archer, the simple curiosity of a child. While she is not a child, she is young, but she is by no means a child. But she has a childlike curiosity about the humans, about us. And that's a truly intriguing thing about Deleen's evolution, because she goes from being very curious to when Ducat is murdered, and she goes through that trauma. And let's be candid, her relationship with Ducat was very familial. It was like a daughter to a father. or perhaps a niece to an uncle or something to that degree. And I find that whole concept very interesting. Something that they've been doing in Star Wars is they've been dealing with the concept of the unconventional family. You saw it with Rebels, you saw it in Clone Wars, you've seen it in Bad Batch and Mandalorian and everything. But this episode very much centers on Deleen's lineage and her family line. And the fact is, the sum of her parts does not make up who she is. It is a part of who she is, but it does not define her. And that, to me, is a really interesting construct that Straczynski presents. So, Elysium, your thoughts?
Actually, when you're speaking about the family, I just remembered I went on a pilgrimage in Bosnia, but we flew into Croatia, and it was in the Bosnian Croat part of Bosnia. And the people there told me that Mir means peace, because you'd see the sign up, and some of the signs Mir, 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 near the Catholic Church. So Deleen's family, translated, pretty much means of peace. And that's a little aside that may be where they got the name from, as well as from Mira Furlan's name.
That's very possible too. And I think I mentioned it in the chat earlier. Her birthday was just a day or two ago, or if not today. And of course, earlier this year, we mourned her passing, and another one passed beyond the rim. And I never knew her in life. I only knew her from her performance from this show. But she seemed like a very lovely and a very charming and a very talented young woman, or woman rather. And as I've said before, she left behind a great legacy with this series, as all the actors and actresses who worked on the series have done. So, but I do want to bring up Colin's comment here. Very briefly. Come to think of it, given how long Minbari lived, she may not have been that long out of what they consider childhood. She certainly came across as rather young. Yeah, Colin, that's not a terribly wrong thing that you bring up there. So, because we don't know how long Minbari lived per se. For all we know, they could live to be 2, maybe even 300 years old for all we know. I mean, they seem like a very long-lived species, and they almost seem like Straczynski's parallel for the elves from The Lord of the Rings, if that makes any sense.
No, I think it's like in Star Trek, the Vulcans would parallel the elves, and so I think, it would be right. The Minbari act very much how the elves would. That they're
go ahead, Lisa.
Long-lived and aloof.
Yeah, they don't see. They almost take up the mindset of Lorien when he says, "When you've lived as long as we have, you come to understand certain truths about existence." But unlike Lorien, they don't have the curiosity to really go out into the universe and explore. So, and Geeks, thank you for being here, and hope you enjoy the stream. And Geeks, I hope I have piqued your curiosity at least, or anything to go check out B5. I have everything that I've done on the series so far cataloged in its own playlist. So if you want to go back and listen to anything, I actually did a whole video just specifically on Deleen and everything. So if you want to check that out, the thing is there. So anyhow, and I'll bring up Colin's comment here. Aloof because they're long-lived, perhaps used to long-term planning. Colin, that's possible too. So, Elysium.
I think humans are seemingly more passionate than the Minbari. They hold a lot in. You can see in Lanier that he does have a lot of passion, but
Mhm.
it's repressed in many ways, like the Vulcans.
Mhm.
And it was just as we were mentioning how Deleen changed to from that almost child thrown into the fire in the among the council
Mhm.
to when she was initiated, you could see a woman far more confident, far more strong and sure of her position and opinions when she was initiated into the council. Because she didn't miss a beat when the triluminary glowed and it freaked the rest of the room out. She stayed going. And at the very start of this episode, we see Lanier, who is still basically low status, in control of the in the tail in the with the Minbari tailors and mocking, joking, playing along. Yeah, use a bigger needle next time. We see a much more evolved Lanier than the one who wouldn't look up.
Yes, and I do love the fact that they do mirror those two scenes where Ducat says, "I can't have an aide who's always bumping into things," and she says something very similar to Lanier when he comes onto the station for the very first time. She's like, "I can't have an aide and everything. I can't have an aide bumping into things. So look up and know that you aren't doing me a disservice. You're doing me a credit because I need you to be at your very best." Colin, woohoo. Yeah, I think woohoo is next week. Oh my
Yes,
goodness, that's gonna be that episode's gonna be a hoot to discuss. Colin's comment here, which by comparison would make Delenn Spock. Maybe a little, because here's the thing: she does have a somewhat very dry sense of humor, so it would make a kind of sense, because if you think about Spock's sense of humor, it is very dry, and that's what makes it so. That's what gives it its punch, much like with what she does.
and Spock
I
is half human.
Yes, that is true. So hey, and you know what? I will say this: that is not a borrowing that necessarily bothers me. Um, because Spock is half human, his mother is human, whereas Delenn isn't necessarily half. She's like an eighth of 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 an eighth. So, but I did want to comment on something you brought up a few minutes ago, Elysium, and that was before she left, she did wear that little black number for John, and well, I will say this for Mira Furlan. She certainly fills out that dress very nicely.
Yes, she wore it well.
She did indeed. Not as well as Suzavava wore that little blue number in third space, but still. Beggars can't be choosers. Okay, this stream's getting a little blue. Sorry about that, folks. I'll bring up Liz Cox's comment here. So, could the Minbari be the Vulcans of B5? I think you could say in a lot of
Yes,
ways, yes, they are a parallel or an analog within B5 for the Vulcans, although they do behave somewhat more, a little bit differently, and they obviously have a much more robust military than the Vulcans do. I mean, we do see a bit of the Vulcan military in Enterprise, but by the time we get to the original series and Next Generation, the Vulcans are pretty much completely de me metil. They don't have a military anymore. I was trying to use the big word, but I can't get my mouth to say it, and I don't know why.
I didn't want to risk it myself.
Anyhow, but you know, the interesting thing is Delenn not knowing much about human sexuality. She seems to know what will turn John's engine. You would not think a lady Minbari of the religious caste would know how to be so alluring, to put it politely. But It's kind of comical to me the way they play with the concept of sexuality in Babylon 5. I mean, if you think about the scene where, or the episode when the Lumati come on board and they want to be impressed by um, the humans, and then Ivanova's like, "Are you really ready for this?" And then she goes into the absolute goofy as hell routine.
Lie to me about your family.
Tell me about your stock portfolio. Oh yes, oh yes. I can't get. My voice can't get as high as.
Yes. Oh, was it Next Time My Way?
Yeah, Next Time My Way. And I'll bring up your comment here in the private from the Lurker's Guide. This is from Elysium, from the Lurker's Guide. From the Lurker's Guide. Won't Sheridan be upset when he finds out Deleen ordered the war? Listen, honey. While you were out there, I went to the store and I could buy some candles. You know how we're going to run out. And there looks at the cat and took in the cat to be cleaned. And oh, I can mention I was directly responsible for the death of 250,000 of your best friends and fellow officers. Plus the sugar. She'll never tell him. Oh my gosh.
The Lurker's Guide is a mine for some really great quotes.
Oh, that's hysterical. That is absolutely hysterical.
He was questioned on an inconsistency that they'd mentioned previous, and he said, sometimes it depends on the plot. And he openly admits, sometimes I'll change canon a little to make the story better. And I like when writers can admit that and do it, and don't, criticize the fans for questioning. He'll say, look, the story needed it. I admit that that's what was said before. Let's move on.
Right. And I do want to bring up Colin's comment here. But do we ever find out about the Minbari attitudes to sex and reproduction, or just about any other race for that matter, with the obvious exception, of course, humans. We all know what turns a human's crank and so on. So no, well, and I guess we know
the Centauri.
Yeah, there's 6, and that's all we know. And that they have, well, at least the males have multiple genitalia, and they can use them to cheat at cards. And that if they get caught, it can get very cold.
Yes, and retracting sounds like Indiana Jones.
Huh?
It sounds like Indiana Jones' whip.
Oh, yeah.
That's something that kind of lived with me for a long time when I heard it first.
I can see that, yeah. But I gotta say, it's been a long time since I watched this episode, and revisiting it last week and again earlier this week, I was like, I remember why this is one of my favorites, because there's so much world building and so much fill in that explains so much. And of course, this obviously I think was at least shot around the same time, or perhaps at least certain footage was reused for the In the Beginning TV movie. And now we understand why Deleen carries such a burden upon her back in terms of what she's had to deal with in her past, and why she reacts the way she does to Lanier when she's like, you may not want to go in there with me. He's like, nothing that I will see, nothing that I will hear will change my opinion of you. I have pledged myself to walk with you through fire and through darkness, and I will be by your side. And I will say this of Mr. Lanier. He is a very good example of an old medieval concept, and that is, of course, the concept of courtly love. He loves the noble lady, even though he knows that he can never have her, that her heart belongs to John. But he has made his peace with it, and he will do everything that he can to protect his noble lady.
I kind of Lanier is a great character, and seeing his progression and what he'll become. Sometimes, like I know there's kind of with spoilers ahead, but how he changes in season 5, becomes much more militant, and like you're saying, the courtly love, a bit like Lancelot.
Yes.
In a way.
Yeah, there's a channel and everything that I follow on a pretty regular basis, and a few years ago they did a video talking about the Arthurian cycle, the Arthurian legends, and the insertion of the whole concept of courtly love. And the channel is called Overly Sarcastic Productions. Great channel. They have a lot of really good deep dives on all sorts of history and mythology and folklore and all sorts of stuff, and the old classic literature like Dante's Inferno and so on. I really recommend you go check them out if y'all haven't. They are a nice, refreshing. They are a nice breath of fresh air. Everything, and they have I think they have a very good take and a very good grasp of the subjects that they cover, and they covered in as the name of their channel is said, overly sarcastic but never mean spirited. So, but I'm going to bring up the other thing from the Lurker's Guide that Lysium has shared in the private here. From the Lurker's Guide, did Deleen's DNA allow her to undergo the transformation? Will this be important in the future? Yeah, the human DNA definitely helps, and overall, this isn't so much the arc as the overall story and history. It's filling in the world. Very true. Very, very true. Because if you think about it, Lewis Cox, apparently Lewis knows overly sarcastic and is a fan as well. So, hey, whatever they say over there on overly sarcastic, right on, Lewis. Yeah, and actually, go ahead, Lysium.
Actually, I hadn't read that bit in the Lurker's Guide. It does actually say the Mira Furlan's name does mean peace, and also play on her name. It was a twofer.
Was not aware of that. So cool. So, and Colin, I've heard of Great Courses Plus, and there's another channel that I follow, History Buffs with I can't remember the guy's name, but he's from your neck of the woods, Elysium, and he's done some really good reviews of historical films and so on. And he's one that I've referenced on a few occasions for other movies that I've reviewed myself. I mean, don't get me wrong, folks. I have a good brain for this stuff, but sometimes it's nice to have some backup material and some extra research. So y'all are learning about some channels that I know of, and obviously you know of as well. So Over the Sarcastic Productions, History Buffs, Comics Explained. Those are my three go. Yeah, Colin Nick Hodges. That's it. That's the guy's name. Yeah.
Yes. There, I think I've seen him. Yeah, he's really, really good.
Yeah, he has some really good takes, and his stuff is really, really funny. I won't lie. And I would love to pick his brain about some stuff on if I ever had the chance. But yeah, Nick Hodges, that's the name of the guy. So, well, Elysium. 30 seconds into Braveheart before his heart explodes. Yeah, I know that review very well. And apparently he did his research. And I will say this, as much as I enjoy Braveheart, I have to agree with some of the inaccuracies because I did my own research and Hodges was right on the numbers with what he came up with. I mean, don't get me wrong. I don't hate Braveheart. I think it's a very entertaining movie, but it has got a lot of historical inaccuracies in it. I will freely and wholeheartedly admit. So, but Elysium, any final thoughts before we wrap up for the afternoon?
I think it was just a short thing about how the Minbari are so into tradition, and because the dreaming, Deleen being told if you don't do it, you won't be allowed to marry. which in some ways is troubling that you're like she says, like speaks so highly of the Minbari. Yes, you must follow the calling of your heart, and yet that's not enough for her to marry Sheridan.
Yeah.
But yet they used tradition to get around tradition in a very Minbari way. That yes, we can give the big. And it was interesting, the victorious side would give a female of their own clan to the one who lost as a symbol of life and hope. But yet, in the lore, the public face is Earth won the war because the Minbari surrendered. So it's very interesting that even the Minbari didn't buy that line, that they themselves see themselves as victorious. It was just, I thought, an interesting play on how things went.
Well, if you come to think about it, I didn't catch that particular point. But yeah, because in the Minbari, they had us dead to rights. They were a pin stroke away from wiping us out, essentially.
And it was tradition wouldn't let the war end, because they do say the warrior caste wanted to end the war because they felt the humans were noble and worthy of survival, and that how the war began was where humans were accused of being underhanded, sneaky, and needed to be wiped out. But the warrior caste said that's not what humans are at all. Humans are noble, honorable, and worthy adversaries on the battlefield. And tradition kept that war going.
Unfortunately, yeah.
And it's something like me, I am a bit of a traditionalist, but it's something I have to be aware of, that tradition is only okay as long as it is of benefit.
Yes.
Once it becomes a hindrance, you need to revisit it. Put it in a museum to take it out and break glass in case of emergency, but put it aside when it affects the greater good.
Yeah, I wholeheartedly agree with that. So,
go ahead. There's just one other small thing.
Sure.
I was watching an interview with Patricia Tallman, and she mentioned that most of the B5 cast were about 5'9" or more, and that was the women. So the men, she said, were all well over 6 foot. So considering how Ducat towered over Deleen, he must have been a huge character actor himself.
Yeah, well, if he was German, as you say, which I have no reason to doubt you, they are very stout in height. Tall. So yeah, we'll explain some of my genetic background and everything, because I myself am very tall. I top out around 6'4", give or take. So, well, anyways, folks, I think that's going to be the review for today, and I want to thank everybody who tuned in today. Archer Colin, Geek Studios, DJ Odyssey. I know Deej was in here for a little bit, Bureau 31, and everybody else that was lurking. I hope you all enjoyed the stream. And of course, once we wrap this puppy up and you catch it on the replay, make sure you leave your comments down below about anything me, myself, Elysium, or Fiona brought up. And we want to send out a very heartfelt get well to our fellow council member Zod Rider. Got a message from our Lord Koj that unfortunately Zod Rider is under the weather, unfortunately. So if you follow Zod on social media, on Twitter and so on, send him a message, wish him well, and we hope he gets well soon, and we do miss him. So, but I do want to let y'all know we will be back next week at 3:30 Central Time with another review. And I also want to let y'all know that Elysium has dropped links for all the members of the council in the chat. So if you are not subscribed or you haven't checked out any of the recent content, I know that Classic Comics has dropped a couple of videos in the last few days, so definitely go check those out. And I am going to be going live again tomorrow evening with part 1 of the Ambassadorial Birthday Bash, and I'll be over exclusively on Twitch and YouTube, and or not YouTube, but Twitch and Facebook, because unfortunately with YouTube, they have that pesky habit of doing copyright claims anytime I do anything that has copyrighted material in it. So, going to be doing a discussion and a karaoke night on great soundtracks of the 80s, 90s, and into the 2000s. So, if you do not follow me on Twitch, I will drop the link on social media so you all can follow me there. And come on over. It'll be at 7:30 Central Time. For those of you that are on this side of the pond, I'm not sure what time it'll be on your side of the pond, Elysium. I know it'll be rather late, but if you're up and you want to talk soundtracks and do a little karaoke and make a complete and total fool of yourself, come join me. So, but that being said, folks, we'll see you next week. And until next week, this is the Council of One saying 1, 2, 3.
Zoot.
Zoot. Zoot.
Zoot.
We got it for a change. Come on, scroll. All right.